Welcome to the Beginning Band COVID Companion, Distance Learning for Band. This is video 2 of a 4-part series. You already learned how to assemble and disassemble your instrument. Now we will learn how to maintain the mechanics of your instrument and disinfect it. Then we will learn how to make beautiful sounds on just our mouthpiece. And lastly, we will perform our first notes. I'm going to teach you how to maintain and disinfect your instrument. First, just listen. Don't try to maintain and disinfect just yet. That will be next. Here are the do's and don'ts of maintaining and disinfecting your flute. First, as we discussed last time, swab your instrument every day. Check for loose screws periodically. Check for loose springs. Apply key oil as needed, but that's not going to be very often. Store your instrument in a dry, safe place. Definitely do not put food into your instrument. And mostly that means don't eat right before you play. Do not allow moisture, grease, oil, or dirt near your keypads. It will ruin them. Make sure not to over-tighten the screws as you maintain them. Don't unscrew the cap on the top of your mouthpiece. And definitely do not use dangerous chemicals without reading the instructions. Blowing food particles through your instrument is one of the primary causes of instrument malfunction. If you must practice immediately after eating, make sure to brush your teeth before playing. And if you're practicing somewhere without your toothbrush, at least rinse your mouth out with water before you play. Insert a corner of your swab cloth into the loop of the cleaning rod and wrap it around the rod. Gently twist and push it through both the body and the foot joint separately. Since I practice my instrument every single day, I keep my swab at home and swab it then to avoid a dirty swab where it can't dry. Swab from the end near the foot joint toward the end where the mouthpiece is to avoid dragging more moisture through your instrument. If you think about it, most of the moisture is going to be near your mouthpiece, so we want to swab that last. If you notice extra moisture after you've swabbed, or if you notice any dust buildup on your pads, you can use cleaning paper. Insert the paper between each key, press down on that key gently with one hand, and pull the paper out with the other hand. It's important that you don't press down too hard, otherwise the paper will tear and it won't do its job in cleaning. If you don't have any fancy cleaning paper, you can use a dollar bill to clean the pads instead. Avoid using a Kleenex though to clean these pads because it will leave behind residual shreds. There is a hidden cork inside of your mouthpiece that is fine-tuned with its cap. You should leave these kinds of adjustments to either your private lessons teacher or to a professional instrument technician. Unless it looks like it's about to fall off, it's best to leave this cap alone. Sometimes the screws come loose on the silver bars. Even though it's uncommon, it's wise to keep an eye on them because if they fall out, your instrument will fall apart. I caution you, do not over-tighten these screws. If you do, the keys on your flute will stop moving and you won't be able to play correctly. If your screw is not over-tightened and your keys still won't move smoothly, you might need to apply key oil, but be careful with this stuff. One drop is enough. If you use more than one drop, it can actually be harmful to your instrument because that oil will get everywhere. Sometimes especially if you're in a hurry. A spring will come loose. Check this first if you know that you have the correct fingering for a note, but it still sounds incorrect. You probably want to ask your teacher for help with this, but once you advanced as a flutist and have seen this a few times, it's actually an easy fix. Take a look at the picture on the left, and you can see that that spring has come loose. It's barely loose, but it's enough to ruin a lot of notes. And then if you look at the picture on the right, that's where that spring goes after it's been corrected. You can bring the shine back to the outside of your flute with a polishing cloth. It'll look brand new. I do this the morning before every performance to wipe off any fingerprints or tarnish. That way my flute is looking its best. If you have become sick or somebody near you has been sick, it's likely that your flute has become infected too. The lip plate is the most important to keep clean because it's the part that touches your mouth. If you have a mouthpiece brush, you can clean the inside of your mouthpiece every day. But if you don't, a Q-tip works just fine. Do not try to play right after you have put dangerous chemicals on the mouthpiece either. Make sure to follow the directions on how long you need to wait for it to be clean. It should be printed on the back of the bottle. You will want to clean any part of the instrument that you've touched with your hands too. Be very careful with sanitary wipes though, because you don't want any moisture getting into those pads. Some chemicals, like rubbing alcohol, will do a good job of killing germs, but it might weaken or remove the lacquer on your instrument. No matter what chemical you use, it is wise to wipe it down with a paper towel afterwards. Absolutely do not try to give your flute a bath in the sink or a bathtub. Other instruments are allowed to do that, but if a flute player does that, it will destroy your keypads. Wash your hands before you play your instrument because you don't want your instrument to become infected. Wash your hands after you play your instrument because your instrument might have been infected. The National Federation of State High School Associations published these findings on June 19, 2020, as a guideline for how long you need to quarantine your instrument regarding the deactivation of COVID-19 on your instrument. For metal, up to 5 days. For wood, up to 4 days. For plastic, up to 3 days. For strings, up to 3 days. And for cork, up to 2 days. So if you have become sick with COVID-19 or somebody near you has become sick with COVID-19, you need to quarantine your flute for 5 days at least, because that's how long it will take COVID to deactivate on your instrument. Now, we will practice maintaining the instrument and disinfecting it together. Now it's time to learn how to maintain and disinfect, how to maintain and disinfect our flute. I can't stress enough how important it is to swab your flute every single time that you play it. We mentioned how to fix loose screws. Take a flathead screwdriver, a very small one, and tighten it just a half turn at a time to make sure that they still move. If they're not over tightened and they still won't move, one single drop of key oil can be used to loosen it right up. Now, make sure you don't use more than one drop because too much key oil can actually harm the pads of your instrument. If you have a mouthpiece brush, you can scrub out the inside of the lip plate hole after you're done playing. There are special sprays made specifically for mouthpieces. Just give it a couple of sprays And wait the necessary amount of time that it says on the back of the bottle before all of the germs have been deactivated. After that, make sure to wipe it down with a paper towel or some sort of cloth because you don't want that residue drying on your instrument. I always disinfect after I'm done playing because you don't want your mouth near those dangerous chemicals if you haven't managed to wipe all of them off. This is how to use the cleaning paper on your pads. Just insert it between the pad and the body of the flute. Press it down with one finger, not too hard, just enough to give a little bit of resistance as you pull it out. That will catch all of the dirt and the moisture that was locked into that pad. And lastly, we should talk about the polishing cloth. I polish my instrument before every performance so my flute is looking its best. You can polish more often than that if you want to. Just take some of the tarnish off that's accumulated over time and wipe off those fingerprints so that it's looking as shiny as when you bought it. That's about it for maintaining and disinfecting your flute. Really want to talk about, though, how long it takes to deactivate COVID-19 on your instrument. It's going to take a minimum of 5 days of leaving your flute in quarantine for that COVID virus to deactivate. I also want to stress how important it is to wash your hands before you play and after you play, every time. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Now that you've assembled, disassembled your instrument, and learned how to maintain and disinfect it, I think it's time that we start making a few notes on our mouthpiece.